Savitri Satsang, Book 1, Canto 2, The Issue. This is a very important canto because we learn here so much from Sri Aurobindo on who Savitri is and what she has to do and what she has to face, and that is the issue. Savitri is a mantra for the transformation of the world, the mother to Udar. That hour had fallen now on Savitri. What exactly is that hour? Well, it is the coming of the death of Satyavan, and Savitri meeting with death and conquering him. That hour had fallen now on Savitri, a point she had reached where life must be in vain, or in her unborn element awake. Sri Aurobindo tells us about the unborn, and it is something still to be born, and that unborn element in her is the divinity, the aspect of the Divine Mother. Her will must cancel her body's destiny. So her body's destiny, as all our bodies, is death. We begin to die the moment we are born. So Sri Aurobindo tells us, for only the unborn spirit's timeless power can lift the yoke imposed by birth in time. And we know that this timeless power of the unborn spirit has that capacity to lift that yoke. And we've often given the image of the two bullocks who are yoked together to thrash the grain, etc., pull a cart. So this yoke, Savitri has to lift. And she can do it because she has the unborn spirit's timeless power. Only the self that builds this figure of self, and note that first self is capitalized. And Sri Aurobindo tells us a good deal about it. In the essays on the Gita, he writes, the self is our self-existent being. And in a letter on yoga, the self is being, not a being. By self, capital S, is meant the conscious, essential existence, one in all. And in the synthesis of yoga, he writes, our highest self, capital S, which possesses and supports this universal power, in brackets, the divine will, is not our ego self, not our personal nature. It is something transcendent and universal, of which these smaller things are only foam and flowing surface. As soon as we become aware of the self. We are conscious of it as eternal, unborn, unembodied, uninvolved in its workings. It can be felt within the form of being, but also as enveloping it, as above it, surveying its embodiment from above, adhyakska. It is omnipresent, the same in everything, infinite and pure, and intangible forever. This self can be experienced as the self of the individual, the self of the thinker, doer, enjoyer, but even so, it always has this greater character. Its individuality is at the same time a vast universality, or very readily passes into that. And the next step to that is a sheer transcendence, or a complete and ineffable passing into the absolute. The self is that aspect of the Brahman in which it is intimately felt as at once individual, cosmic, transcendent of the universe. The realization of the self is the straight and swift way towards individual liberation, a static universality, a nature transcendence. At the same time, there is a realization of self, in which it is felt not only sustaining and pervading and enveloping all things, but constituting everything, and identified in a free identity with all its becomings in nature. Even so, freedom and impersonality are always the character of the self. There is no appearance of subjection to the workings of its own power in the universe, such as the apparent subjection of the Purusha to Prakriti. To realize the self is to realize the eternal freedom of the spirit. And this quote is from the Life Divine. So we see that only the self that builds this figure of self can raise the fixed, interminable line that joins these changing names, these numberless lives, these new oblivious personalities. So let's go back just a few lines. What is this raise? Can raise the fixed, interminable line. Well, R-A-S-E is a variant of R-A-Z-E. And it means to tear down so as to make flat with the ground, demolish. So R-A-S-E was used more frequently in Sri Aurobindo's time, and today we use R-A-Z-E. Now, of course, the interminable line is a line that has no limits. And what is that line? It's a line that joins these changing names, these numberless lives, these new oblivious personalities. So we have so many changing names because we take birth again and again. And we have numberless lives. And we even have these new oblivious personalities which are without any remembrance or memory, and keeps still lurking in our conscious acts the trail of old forgotten thoughts and deeds. Disown the legacy of our buried selves, the burdensome heirship to our vanished forms, accepted blindly by the body and soul. So we do have to disown this legacy of the past, of our buried selves. And this burdensome, this heavy, oppressive, onerous, distressing, troublesome heirship, inheritance to our vanished forms that are accepted blindly by the body and soul. An episode in an unremembered tale, its beginning lost, its motive and plot concealed, a once living story has prepared and made our present fate child of past energies. This is karma. The fixity of the cosmic sequences. And these cosmic sequences are fixed. The planets move in a certain motion and speed. The stars move. The earth moves around the sun. So all of these cosmic sequences in us as well, that are fastened with hidden, inevitable links, she must disrupt, dislodge by her soul's force, her past, a block on the immortal's road. Make a raised ground and shape anew her fate. And this is the second time in not so many lines that Sri Aurobindo uses the word raised, which we have learned is demolish. Make a raised ground and shape anew her fate. A colloquy of the original gods. Now, a colloquy is a formal conversation, a dialogue. And these original gods, Sri Aurobindo tells us in his essays on the Gita, the gods are the great undying powers and immortal personalities who consciously inform, constitute, preside over the subjective and objective forces of the universe, of the cosmos. He tells us also in one of his letters on yoga, the gods, as has already been said, are in origin and essence permanent emanations of the divine, put forth from the Supreme by the transcendent Mother, the Adya Shakti. In their cosmic action, they are powers and personalities of the divine, each with his independent cosmic standing, function, and work in the universe. They are not impersonal entities, but cosmic personalities, although they can and do ordinarily veil themselves behind the movement of impersonal forces. And in another letter on yoga, of course the gods exist. That is to say, there are powers that stand above the world and transmit the divine workings. It is the physical mind which believes only what is physical that denies them. There are also beings of other worlds, gods and asuras. And in the Life Divine, he tells us, the gods, who in their highest secret entity are powers of this supermind, born of it, seated in it, as in their proper home, are in their knowledge truth conscious, and in their action possessed of the seer will. And lastly, in the secret of the Veda, he writes, the gods are the powers of light, the children of infinity, forms and personalities of the one Godhead, who, by their help and by their growth and human workings in man, raise him to the truth and the immortality. So we now go back to this colloquy, a colloquy of the original gods, meeting upon the borders of the unknown, her soul's debate with embodied nothingness. You see, Sri Aurobindo often gives us these paradoxical statements to lift us into an understanding that is even above the mind. Mentally, what is embodied nothingness? Nothingness that can take a body? Well, here we are, a paradox. Her soul's debate with embodied nothingness must be wrestled out on a dangerous, dim background. Her being must confront its formless cause. Against the universe weigh its single self. On the bare peak, where self is alone with naught, and life has no sense, and love no place to stand, she must plead her case upon extinction's verge. In the world's death cave, uphold life's helpless claim, and vindicate her right to be and love. Altered must be nature's harsh economy. Acquittance she must win from her acquittance she must win from her past's bond, an old account of suffering exhaust. And I have told you, perhaps more than once, about Mother telling us that she was here from the beginning of all creation, helping the evolution. And once she told the story of being with her family and friends and going down into something of a cavernous area in a building, perhaps a church or something, and immediately wanted to leave because she realized that she was there before and her head was cut off. She also tells the story of these two children during World War II who were walking behind their parents, and a bomb hit the parents, and the children were left alone and began to cry and pray for milk. And Mother said their prayer was so pure that she had to come and care for them and give them milk. So she has to win acquittance from her past bond and an old account of suffering exhaust. Strike out from time the soul's long compound debt. Strike out from time the soul's long compound debt and the heavy servitudes of the karmic gods, the slow revenge of unforgiving law, and the deep need of universal pain and hard sacrifice and tragic consequence. Well, we have all suffered something of this universal pain, illness, death, the passing of loved ones, etc. And we have known hard sacrifice and tragic consequence. Out of a timeless barrier she must break, penetrate with her thinking depths the void's monstrous hush, look into the lonely eyes of immortal death, and with her nude spirit measure the infinite's night. Now I would like to share with you Sri Aurobindo's writings on death. And it will take some time, but it will be worth it for all of you. Sri Aurobindo tells us so many things about death, and I'm going to read a lot of them to you, because you will see that death is a totally different thing, explained by Sri Aurobindo. From his letters on yoga, we have 3 quotes. For the spiritual seeker, death is only a passage from one form of life to another, and none is dead, but only departed. Next one, death, has no separate existence by itself. It is only a result of the principle of decay in the body, and that principle is there already. It is part of the physical nature. At the same time, it is not inevitable. At the same time, it is not inevitable. If one could have the necessary consciousness and force, decay and death is not inevitable. But to bring that consciousness and force into the whole of the material nature is the most difficult thing of all. At any rate, in such a way as to annul the decay principle. And the third, death is there because the being in the body is not yet developed enough to go on growing in the same body without the need of change, and the body itself is not sufficiently conscious. If the mind and vital and the body itself were more conscious and plastic, death would not be necessary. So we can imagine, suppose we were 100 years old, ailing, with many physical problems. Would we want to continue to live in that same state for more years? This is what Sri Aurobindo is telling us. Now, in his essays in philosophy and yoga, he writes, death is the question nature puts continually to life, and her reminder to it that it has not yet found itself. If there were no siege of death, the creature would be bound forever in the form of an imperfect living. Pursued by death, he awakes to the idea of perfect life and seeks out its means and its possibility. Again, in the same Essays in Philosophy and Yoga, we have to face the future's offer of death as well as its offer of life, and it need not alarm us, for it is by constant death to our old names and forms that we shall live most vitally in greater and newer forms and names. And in the life divine, death has no reality except as a process of life. Disintegration of substance and renewal of substance, maintenance of form and change of form are the constant process of life. Death is merely a rapid disintegration, subservient to life's necessity of change and variation of formal experience. Even in the death of the body, there is no cessation of life. Only the material of one form of life is broken up to serve as material for other forms of life. And in the letters of yoga, of course, that is the real fact. Death is only a shedding of the body, not a cessation of the personal existence. A man is not dead because he goes into another country and changes his clothes to suit that climate. And in the essays on the Gita, man, born into the world, revolves between world and world in the action of Prakriti and Karma. Purusha in Prakriti is his formula. What the soul in him thinks, contemplates, and acts, that always he becomes. All that he had been determined his present birth. All that he is, thinks, does in this life up to the moment of his death determines what he will become in the worlds beyond and in lives yet to be. If birth is a becoming, death also is a becoming, not by any means a cessation. And then again in Essays on the Gita, a long but very important passage that I will share with you. There is no such thing as death, for it is the body that dies, and the body is not the man. That which really is cannot go out of existence, though it may change the forms through which it appears. Just as that which is non-existent cannot come into being. The soul is and cannot cease to be. The opposition of is and is not, this balance of being and becoming, which is the mind's view of existence, finds its end in the realization of the soul as the one imperishable self by whom all this universe has been extended. Finite bodies have an end, but that which possesses and uses the body is infinite, illimitable, eternal, indestructible. It casts away old and takes up new bodies, as a man changes worn-out raiment for new. And what is there in this to grieve at, and recoil and shrink? This is not born, nor does it die, nor is it a thing that comes into being once, and passing away will never come into being again. It is unborn, ancient, sempiternal. It is not slain with the slaying of the body. Who can slay the immortal spirit? Weapons cannot cleave it, nor the fire burn, nor do the waters drench it, nor the wind dry. Eternally stable, immobile, all-pervading, it is forever and forever. Not manifested like the body, but greater than all manifestation. Not to be analyzed by the thought, but greater than all mind. Not capable of change and modification, like the life and its organs and their objects, but beyond the changes of mind and life and body. It is yet the reality which all these strive to figure. And lastly, from another letter on yoga. Even science believes that one day death may be conquered by physical means, and its reasonings are perfectly sound. There is no reason why the supramental force should not do it. Forms on earth do not last. They do in other planes, because these forms are too rigid to grow, expressing the progress of the spirit. If they become plastic enough to do that, there is no reason why they should not last. And then we go on to the next line in Savitri. Look into the lonely eyes of immortal death, and with her nude spirit measure the infinite's night. The great and dolorous moment now was close. A dolorous moment, grievous, mournful. A mailed battalion marching to its doom. A mailed battalion. Mailed is clad or armed with mail. And a battalion is always a large, indefinite number of persons or things. The last long days went by with heavy tramp. Long, but too soon to pass, too near the end. Alone amid the many faces loved, aware among unknowing happy hearts, her armored spirit kept watch upon the hours, listening for a foreseen tremendous step, a foreknowledge, in the closed beauty of the inhuman wilds.